OK, let's talk about the National Party. They've been talking about what they call the squeezed middle. Is this budget a response to that?
No, what this budget is a response to is the rising cost of living and the global inflation pressures that we're seeing. But it's much more than that, Connor. I mean, yes, the cost of living package is important, but the budget balances that with the big investments in health, climate change, supporting businesses that we need to grow those high-wage jobs. And that is the job of the Minister of Finance. We have to deal with the here and now, but we've also got to deal with making sure we deal with those issues of tomorrow. And that's why I think we've got that balance right. I haven't heard a single thing from National about what they'd actually do or what they would cut in order to make sure they could pay for their bigger, longer-term tax cut package. So for me, a budget's always about a careful balance, and I think we've struck it here.
OK, so let's talk about that health spending. More than $11 billion. It is a massive investment in the health system. And yet, the Maori Health Authority gets just $40 million a year to pay for Maori services. How is that going to close the gap?
Well, actually, the Maori Health Authority gets a significant amount more than that. So we funded it $240 million in budget 2021. We now have directly for the commissioning of by Māori for Māori services $166 million over this budget period. They also take responsibility now for the spending within the overall budget to the tune of around $300 to $350 million a year, over $1 billion across the forecast period to support Māori health outcomes. We have never in New Zealand given the kind of funding we're giving for direct commissioning of services. The other thing I'd say is that Māori will still be using hospitals, Māori will still be using ambulances that we've increased the funding for in this budget. We will now have a nationwide health system that also starts to address those decades-long inequities. So there's more funding in future years for sure, but this is a fantastic start for actually funding Māori health services properly.
But $40 million a year over the next 4 years, I mean, it's 1% of the total health budget. Is this the partnership you were talking about when you set this up?
This is the first time we've ever funded this level of direct commissioning of by Māori for Māori health services, and that is just a fraction of the overall budget that we're giving for Māori health.
Even the ACT Party say we should be spending $3.5 billion a year on Māori. ACT say that.
If you look at the total budget that we're spending significant amounts of resources, lifting not only the spending for Māori health, but in areas like whānau order, which I'm sure the ACT Party have promised to get rid of, where we're putting in an extra $166 million. I am extremely proud of the fact that we've taken the step forward to not only create a proper nationwide health service where everybody gets care wherever they are, but that we're stepping forward into this area. If you talk to the Maori Health Authority, they'll also say we need to build the capacity out there in the sector to deliver these programs. There's actually another $30 million in the budget to do that, plus another $40 million to build the Maori health workforce. We are on a journey here that will deliver significantly better health services and outcomes for Māori, and I'm certainly not going to be lectured by David Seymour about the lack of investment that would come from him if he ever got hold of the budget.
OK, so how long is that journey going to take? How long before Māori health outcomes catch up?
Yeah, and it will be a long period of time because we're dealing with decades of disparities here. What we have is an initial 2-year budget, and then from 2024, 3-year budgets. And so you will see improvements for Māori across those years, but I'm not promising it'll all happen overnight, and people who work in the health sector understand that. It's the reason why they've backed us to make these changes, even though we've been dealing with a pandemic, because they know how needed they are. There will be improvements, and they will happen over time.
OK, let's talk about Pharmac. I know it's a record investment, $191 million to buy new drugs over the next 2 years. There are 128 drugs on Pharmac's wish list. How many of those is this going to fund?
This is going to fund significant advances